Thank you for joining us on this edition of the New Mexico Motorsports Report, brought to you here on the Proview Networks. I'm your host, Dominic Aragon, Editor-in-Chief of the RacingExperts.com.
And I'm David Swope, host of the New Mexico Motorsports Report on ESPN Radio 101.7 The Team.
And I'm Brooklyn Green, sideline reporter for the New Mexico Motorsports Report.
A lot of racing action this weekend. Let's get started with some of your top headlines. The NASCAR Cup Series, Denny Hamlin goes on to claim his 31st career win in NASCAR's top series. Led the most laps, guys. Had a great performance, but Martin Truex didn't go down without a fight. Truex lost the lead with 3 laps to go with hitting the wall. Denny Hamlin was really ecstatic about his win. Let's take a listen on what he had to say.
All of it was awesome. I mean, to win in the Flying 11 and to win the Xfinity race, win the Cup race, both in very exciting fashion, was a great feeling. And then, to fight through the adversity of, missing the pit road and coming back. And we had great strategy, fast car, and it just worked out in the end.
So we've been kind of following these guys all season. Heartbreak again for Martin Truex Jr., who led these stages. He goes on and wins more stages, just did not seal the deal.
Well, I don't know if you can say it's a heartbreak when the guys won already 4 races this season. They were pretty strong. But yeah, it was Denny was in the right position, and what's absolutely amazing though is the fact that he missed pit road, coming in and didn't lose a lap and was able to come back. He was coming pretty strong. They pushed those tires as much as they could, and that's why blew a tire and hit the wall. But Truex is going to be just fine. Truex is going to be fine.
There you go. He's entering as the points leader. Denny Hamlin, Joe Gibbs Racing, I think we are seeing a resurgence here because they've won now 3 out of the last 6 races. I think Joe Gibbs Racing is back.
Well, I agree, and that's a little scary for the rest of the field. When you take a look at, before we get into the final 16, Jimmy Johnson and what's going on at Hendrick should be the most concerned with the resurgence. Ford was actually pretty strong in the race, and that was good to see because it looked like it was really going to be more of a battle all about Toyota. But you see that I don't know if the team, if now you could still say Furniture Row and JGR are a team. Because they've been, both going at it pretty good, and of course, Eric Jones, in the 77 is doing fantastic over there. So eventually, he's going to move over. So I really wonder down the road, what that means for Kansas. I mean, is this a must win for Kansas at Richmond?
Absolutely, and that's the thing we kind of talked about before the show. There are 18 drivers who can still go out to Richmond and punch their playoff ticket, but it looks like the field's pretty much set here. Like, we know it's going to come down between maybe a Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Joey Logano. We know at least one of those guys aren't making the playoffs. Who punches their ticket this Saturday night?
Well, Joey Logano's got to win, and I know you're a big fan of Mr. Logano, but Joey's got to win. I mean, can you imagine what it's like to have a win yet it's encumbered and not make it to the playoffs? And not only that, I mean, he's been every year in his pro career has made it to the playoffs, so it's going to be very interesting. I mean, he's got to win. I tell you, nothing's going to be better than you come down. Matt Kenseth is leading and he's ahead of Joey Logano, and you got to be thinking, is there going to be retaliation? I mean, is he going to push him? Is he going to push him to go to the win?
So he had that win taken away back in May. Was in a playoff spot. What would it mean then if Joey Logano could go out, win at Richmond, not have the penalties, and make the playoffs? The track that took away his win.
Personally, I don't want to see him make it. That's just me. I'd much rather see Earnhardt Jr. win. It's his last season. I mean, Joey Logano, he's full of surprises, so we never know.
Absolutely. Is there somebody who goes out there and makes the playoff and stuns us on Saturday night?
Well, I mean, we could go back to Dale Earnhardt Jr. making it, and we've had this discussion on the radio show, of course, which is, do you want Jr. to make it in? I mean, make it in and not make it through the first round. I mean, we're definitely gonna see what happens with a lot of the fluke wins, if you will. But there's a lot of people. To me, Eric Jones, I mean, would be exciting to see Eric Jones punch his ticket and be into the race, because I think it'd be pretty interesting. Jamie McMurray is like, hanging around. He's like the consummate, points racer, just doesn't get over. But I'm excited about the win. But I mean, Daniel Suarez, could win, punch his ticket in there. I don't see we're gonna see like a Chris Buescher or anything like happen with the rain shortened race. Anything like that's gonna happen. But I think it does make it exciting, and I mean, pretty much like you said, anybody can make it. I mean, Matt Benedetto. I mean, that would probably be the craziest story. Danica Patrick. and Danica Patrick makes it in, I mean, because we don't really know what the situation on her ride is next year. How many people could potentially this may decide whether they got a ride next season or not? That's probably the bigger question.
Well, and included on that list, and here's a name to put on your guys' radar for Saturday night, Eric Almirola. Now, he sat out a few races. He had his injuries. Finished 4th in this race 2 years ago, and he had a lot of guys sweating, like a Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., a lot of these guys who were not locked in on points a couple of years ago. Almirola has proven at Richmond that he can run inside the top 10 and inside the top 5. We see the 43 car return to victory lane?
The only way the 43 car is going to return to victory lane is if they roll in, the throwback one of Dale Petty. By the way, did you see that he wouldn't get out of the pace car? Did you see they had to run an extra 2 laps because the King wouldn't get out of the car in the throwback? I thought that was phenomenal. I thought that was great. But that's the only way, I'm sorry, that the 43. Now, of course, if we're talking 2018, the 43, could definitely make it with Bubba Wallace Jr. But I don't think that Eric Almirola is actually long for NASCAR.
We'll see what happens with that team. And speaking of drivers punching their playoff ticket, we saw the truck race on Sunday right there before the Cup race. Austin Cindric with the last lap bump and run pass with Kaz Grella to make the playoffs. Let's take a listen to what Cindric had to say in the post-race media center.
I hate for it to come down to that. I think it made an easy decision since Kaz already had a win to make it in the playoffs. So for us, it gives us a brighter light down at the end of the tunnel and hopefully something to chase after for the rest of the year because we're in the playoffs, we're contending for the championship, and hopefully we can ride it out and make something happen.
Was it perfectly okay for Austin Cindric to do that on Sunday?
I tell you, if you don't want to get spun, don't let him get to your bumper. I said this before, and of course you're going to disagree with me.
Easier
but let me tell you,
done.
once you've been an official and you've sat up in there and you've got to make a decision, and, it's like, well, okay, we're going to give him his position back. We're going to throw out a yellow flag. We're going to do something like that. I mean, if you don't want the guy to spin you, don't let him get to your bumper. I mean, that's just as classic as can be, and especially when it's like when and you're in. Kaz Grella, I mean, he got spun. He's in. Of course, he's a road course specialist on top of it. That's a race he should win. But I tell you, I mean, I got to ask you, Brooklyn, if you don't want to get spun, don't let him to your bumper.
I mean, rubbing is racing, but I think there's an extent to it. I mean, I don't agree with drivers that do things like that. I think if you're going to win, you need to have it locked in. I mean, I didn't agree with it. I don't think that it was clean driving, but that's just me.
What I would disagree with is if he spun him and then put him into the fence. I mean, he spun him. He just moved him up. I mean, Dale Earnhardt Sr., I mean, the Intimidator. I mean, how many times did he give somebody a little nudge, send him up the track? I mean, it happened in, IndyCar last week, with Newgarden pushing his way through. It was 2 weeks ago, pushing his way through. I mean, yes, rubbing is racing, but hey, if you don't want to get spun, just don't let him get to your bumper.
I mean, did you hear his interview after? He was just very cocky. I didn't agree with how he even took it. I mean, okay, he got the win, yeah, but he didn't do it the right way, and he didn't have any remorse for it either, and that's what kind of got me a little.
Well, where's that fine line in the sand? Should NASCAR kind of step in when they feel it's gone too far, or should there be any policing of this?
We'll settle it on the track, won't they? I mean, this is, I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, I mean, do you think, Grella was just going to stay back and let him win? I think he's going to go for the win. I think that's the culture. I think that's the culture of racing. It happens all the time. It happens, down in Bandoleros. I mean, I'm sure it happened in quarter midgets. And maybe, the parents or something would take them aside and, or better yet, you'd stop playing with the kid, right? I mean, you just stop. But I mean, they're out there to win. Sure. And if the opportunity is there, the best way to not have somebody take out your opportunity is to not allow them to get there. So I don't see how you can. Perfect example is a couple of weeks ago they were playing the games, coming off pit road, with the brake check. I mean, Denny Hamlin. I mean, how do you step in and legislate that? Because now all of a sudden, if you're saying, hey, if you brake check or you change your position, well, I mean, it blew up in his face, right? Instead of falling back because he wanted an inside lane, so instead of falling back one position, he fell back 2 positions. So it ended up costing himself. So I think that a lot of that stuff's just going to work itself out.
Well, David, you've raced before, and for the viewers at home that may not know, this man is a 2005 track champion out of Sandia. Now, had you done a move like
1,600 cc's, that's right.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, had you done a move like Austin Cedric done, could you have lived with yourself after making the choice to bump and run somebody on the last lap for the win?
Could I or did I?
Well,
I know that I moved. I know that I moved people. I've done it many times. As a matter of fact, one of my final races there, I was going for the win, and the guy tried to let somebody up on the high side, so he slid down. I went on the inside of the track, and fell all the way back to 4th or 5th. So that's just what happens. But yeah, I mean, we were in a division called slug bugs. What do you expect? I mean, there was a lot of slugging and a lot of bumping and carrying on, and the fenders were inexpensive, so it wasn't. But we didn't drive anybody into the fence. We didn't cause a car to turn over. I mean, that's really where I think that they need to legislate it. Is it a safety issue? Yes. Otherwise, it's going to settle itself. Likewise, will you create more? I mean, the rule book's already this thick. Does it need to be thicker? I mean, granted, now we can put it on our smartphones and we could look it up really quickly, but you print it out, it looks like Encyclopedia Britannica. And this is on all forms of sports. Most of the things are going to take care of themselves.
Sure. Oh, and we've seen it before, like how you said in the playoffs, that fine line in the sand getting crossed with Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano a couple years ago at Kansas and Martinsville. I think we could possibly see some of this in the chase, especially if we're seeing a lot of these guys doing this now at the road course races, or how we saw last week with Jeremy Clemens and Matt Tifft.
Yeah, I hope so.
So
I hope we see it in the playoffs. I mean, that's why I'm going to tune in. I'm not going to, tune in because it's high tea or something like that. I mean, I want to see these guys getting out, sweating, and working hard for it. So, I mean, that's why we tune in, right?
Sure.
That's why we tune in.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, we're going to take a quick break here on the New Mexico Motorsports Report. Don't touch that dial.
Don't sacrifice quality and flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number 1. Cover it with green stuff, 1 scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Garden Sorts Team Sales is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Get into the game. Garden Schwartz Team Sales features fine products and apparel from Wilson, Schutt Sports, Speedline, and Russell Athletics. We offer custom embroidery and screen printing services for all of your school or club needs, from team uniforms to school letter jackets. Specializing in all sports and serving all communities, from big schools to small schools, from up north to down south, or all points in between. Garden Schwartz Team Sales. For great prices, friendly staff, and quality products, call Garden Schwartz Team Sales today at 1-800-880-7767. That's 1-800-880-7767. Since 1939, Garden Schwartz Team Sales is a proud supporter of New Mexico youth athletics.
welcome back to the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on the Proview Networks. I'm your host, Dominic Aragon, joined alongside David Swope and Brooklyn Green. Dave, a lot more racing that happened this weekend, especially on the open wheel circuit.
Absolutely. IndyCar is really starting to heat up with the championship coming down and is getting more and more dramatic. Points leader Joseph Newgarden had issues on pit road and ultimately finished multiple laps down. Scott Dixon and Helio Castroneves capitalized on his mistakes, with both guys finishing inside the top 5. The final race of the year is in 2 weeks at Sonoma Raceway. Joseph Newgarden has a 3-point lead over Scott Dixon. 4 other championship drivers are eligible for the championship: Castroneves, Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, and Alexander Rossi. And I tell you, I thought it was a very entertaining race, and it seemed like Newgarden just didn't have it together the whole race. You know, nothing was going his way. Alexander Rossi, though, starting on the pole and getting it done. And of course, you know, earlier that week, Honda had signed an extension with Andretti Autosports, so it was really important for them to have a good showing. But it was, it's always hard going against those Penske Chevrolets. But
Sure.
It was quite an entertaining race.
Picture perfect weekend there for Alexander Rossi, winning the pole, leading throughout the race, and then getting it done when it counted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he showed some really, why he's there and that he's going to able to do it. Of course, his only other win, was the Indy 500. I mean, what a great first win to have to walk around and carry. But now he gets it done on a circuit, a race road racing circuit. I thought he looked impressive. I thought that, of course, the equipment, Honda, was doing good. Was sitting there, of course, thinking about if this was over at Formula One, that Alonso would have been complaining about the Honda equipment. So clearly they got something going on in the United States that they're not getting done at Formula One. But Helio Castroneves now has a shot, because of course they're talking about don't let Scott Dixon get in sniffing range, and now he's within 3 points, double points race. Of course he ended up in a tie a couple of years ago. Juan Pablo Montoya ends up winning it on a tie break. So don't let Scott Dixon have like any room. But then you can look back, and Helio Castroneves is actually within striking distance. If he got that victory, would Penske actually think about, okay, I'm bringing him back to open wheel? Because of course right now he's talking about going sports car racing next year. It's going to be very interesting.
You got it, and you bring up double points, and Joseph Newgarden having those issues on pit road, getting slammed from behind, leaving pit road through turn 1. This thing's going to be very tight when you look at Sonoma Raceway in a couple weeks. 6 drivers eligible for that championship, but only 2 of them really control their own destiny, that being Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden. They can win and make the playoffs. Hell, he can go out there and win the race, but he can still finish second in points. I mean, Is this guy going to get it done? This is his last chance. He has the last chance to do it in his last possible start, his last confirmed start for Penske in open wheel. He's IndyCar's Mark Martin.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, by the way, is a great guy, and Helio Castroneves is not a poor man. So we really don't have to feel sorry for him. But what is really impressive, what Joseph Newgarden has put together, is this is his rookie season. I mean, he's like the best of a 4-car team that represents the top 5 cars. Simon Pagenaud, who won the championship last year in his sophomore season, is sitting back there in 4th. And likewise, it's going to take a lot of help, for him to actually to win. But Penske just has a way of picking drivers. And I actually think that, of course, there's a contract extension. There's a contract offered to Rossi. Of course, Rossi stays with the manufacturer. One thing I didn't realize is manufacturer decisions on teams are much more important in open wheel than there are in any other form of sport. They actually dictate that. So it's why it happened is the process was first Honda decided they're going to come back to Andretti Autosport. Then Rossi signs the very next day. I tell you, I'm sure that the captain was sitting over there going, I'd really like to get my hands on that. What's also exciting in IndyCar, the whole split between CART and IRL way back in the day was because there was not enough American drivers. Right now, Alexander Rossi sounds like a European name, but he's an English driver. Right, leading the points right now, Joseph Newgarden. Also sounds like an English name, but he's from Indiana. So I mean, this is really exciting. This is really what they wanted, And then you look at the strength of the teams. Ganassi is still there, just quietly. It's Scott Dixon. What's going to happen when Scott Dixon leaves? I mean, is it going to be a shot? Almost anybody can make it, So I think it's going to be pretty exciting. Contrast that to Formula One. I mean, Formula One, Lewis Hamilton on the pole dominates the whole race. Bottas, ended up having a pretty rough start, but works his way back through. And I mean, Spa. I mean, I'd like to go there. I'd like to go to the Italian Grand Prix just to go to the Italian Grand Prix because the Grand Prix race was just boring. I mean, you got teammates. If it wasn't for, for Ocon and Perez running into each other every week, I mean, it really would be kind of boring, And so that's why they talk about it. Need more American races, but we need more competitive races. I mean, it's amazing. The equipment is state of the art. It's absolutely amazing. A pit stop with like 2.5 seconds. It's because they're not changing fuel. 2018, they're going to go back to changing fuel. Filling up the cars. It's going to make it a little more competitive, but. It's just boring. I mean, the tracks are beautiful. The racing is boring. And so that's the big difference in a lot of motorsports is people just find it to be boring.
Well, we talk about all the time. NASCAR fans complain because the race is boring. F1 fans complain because it's boring. I think what NASCAR fans need to realize is if they want to watch a boring race, tune into F1 because you have just a few cars that finish on the lead lap, and that's not a bash against F1. That's just comparing to what NASCAR fans from the 1970s had to go through. Few guys just finishing on the lead lap, one or two drivers dominating like we see with Lewis Hamilton or the Mercedes team or with Team Red Bull. You just see one or two dominant teams and everyone else is just kind of trailing along. That's kind of how NASCAR was 40 years ago. And I think that's a good, good comparison?
Well, I think it's a good comparison. I think you need a little bit of hatred. You need a little bit of, people that don't like each other. Kyle Busch and everybody. Right, and you look at that form of racing. Some of these drivers, I guess you at Formula One level, Verstappen. A lot of people are don't like Verstappen. He's 19 years old and he's doing a fantastic job for Red Bull. But I think that it's those characters. You need the black hat, right? Okay, we need. NASCAR needs Kyle Busch. You need the guy that you root against. The guy that makes you mad when he wins. That's what happened to me at Bristol, right? So I'm sitting there watching the race and Kyle Busch wins. I mean, I'm like going, come on, Eric Jones, come on, Eric Jones. But no, Kyle Busch wins. And he gets as many cheers as he gets boos. And so I think that you go back to Formula One, and you got to go all the way back to in the 70s before you had people that really despised each other. AJ Foyt hated everybody, right? I mean, so I just think that that's the comparison is there. Is staying in line and following each other. We went to the Indy 500 back in 2014. I mean, the first 150 laps. I mean, nose to tail. I mean, we had 2 spins. I mean, that was basically it. Then it comes down to if they finally brought out that red flag with 8 laps to go, and then it was a shootout. And then it was back and forth. And so, sometimes you have to manufacture racing. I mean, you can even say that that's why we went to the stage racing this year, is we want to manufacture drama. Mm-hmm. And of course, that absolutely happened in the Xfinity race of all. If you want to go back to the Xfinity race and watch them swap for the lead, Hamlin ends up going from 3rd to 2nd in that. And, it was a pretty exciting race. But I think that, you have to have characters. You have to have somebody to dislike, right? And
sure.
So it's just like, hey, it's like watching the Dallas Cowboys, right? Half the people love them, half the people hate them, right? And so, the ones that really love the Cowboys, their Saturday afternoons are ruined when the Cowboys lose. They're going to the championship whenever they win. So it's the same in racing. Is I think that you even said to jokingly off camera to Brooklyn earlier that she didn't like a particular driver, and you said why? Because Denny Hamlin. It was Denny Hamlin. Oh, you don't like Denny Hamlin because he wins too much. and I was like, did you say that? And that is absolutely true. I mean, who wants? I want to go watch a Super Bowl that's competitive. I don't want to see New England in the Super Bowl again. I am sick of them. Tom Brady is just too good looking.
It's always good to have someone new.
Absolutely, because it keeps you watching.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of somebody new, we're going to have someone new on top of the NMPA Most Popular Driver Award next year because Dale Earnhardt Jr. stepping away. Brooklyn, some exciting news coming out of the NMPA.
Oh yeah, fans can finally vote for their favorite NASCAR driver at NASCAR.com/mostpopulardriver. The National Motorsports Press Association has given the award to the driver fans vote since the 1950s. The NMPA says people can vote once per once per day per email address. Voting runs through Sunday, November 19th. The winner will be announced at the awards banquet in Las Vegas, November 30th. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has won the award the last 14 seasons.
See, does anyone get tired of Dale Earnhardt Jr. winning this award?
I do. I do. It's un-American. It's un-American for one guy to win all the time. So much so that, of course, the favorite right now, so the betting line is already out that Chase Elliott's going to take over that, right? So Chase Elliott, he can't even decide what car number he wants, right? Do I want the number 24? Do I want the number 9? You know, and it's like, oh, well, Chase Elliott's going to get it because his dad won it, 13 times in a row? Mm-hmm. You know, so yeah, I think that something needs to change there. You know, and I'm not saying that we should rig it and say you can't vote for a particular person over another person. But yeah, I mean, I just think that, hey, there's a lot of other guys out there. Martin Truex Jr. I mean, Martin Truex Jr. is actually one of my favorite drivers, and he's been through a lot. You consider what happened in Richmond, and he was in, and of course you got the the Boyer spin, to try and get to get him into the playoffs. And it's just one of those things. And then Napa left him, and the whole thing. And it's like, he just battled back and took, a little team from Denver, in Furniture Row, and took him to the top. And we've talked to Cole Pearn before, and you see that relationship developing between Cole Pearn and Martin Truex Jr. Just like you see, Chad Knaus and Dale Earnhardt Jr. That I think it's exciting. There should be more than one reason, to vote. Because if we're going to do that, why don't we vote for the most hated driver too? I mean, I'm all over, nominating Kyle Busch for that one.
Sure. Well, Martin Truex Jr., like you bring up a great point there too, because here's a guy who's had so much adversity. Again, we use that word a lot here, but in his professional career and his personal life with his longtime girlfriend having the cancer battle she's had to face, and truly a great story to see Martin Truex come back and run so competitive at a level we thought we probably never would see him at. But yeah. Coming up on the other side of the break, we've got a very special guest joining us in studio. You're watching the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on the Proview Networks.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
Gecko's Bar and Tapas, a proud supporter of Proview Networks. It's been a fan favorite spot for food lovers and sports fans. With not one, but 2 great locations, including outdoor patio, an atmosphere you won't want to miss. Gecko's, off Academy and in Nob Hill. Ladera Golf Course. Opened in 1980, Ladera features a full 18 including spacious greens, a large driving range, roomy practice putting greens, and 4 large lakes. Surrounding Ladera, beautiful views of the Sandia Mountains to the east and volcanoes to the west. Ladera is a challenging city-owned course with the longest playing yardage of any other city courses. For weekend tee times and more information, call 505-836-4449.
Welcome back to the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on Proview Network. And joining the show right now is Jim Costa with Yearwood Performance. How you doing this morning, Jim?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that you can't be around cars and around racing without being around you.
Yeah, I kind of frequent the places.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking the number of cars in town alone that have the Yearwood logo on it. I mean, you got to have a lot of parts in there and stuff too as well.
Yeah, we now buy those stickers 10,000 at a time.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, do you have to restock those every year? I mean, at 10,000, is that like a 2-year supply?
Almost. Yeah, about a year and a half.
So a couple of years ago, and maybe even last season, you kind of did a redo on the logo. I mean, that must have cost you a bunch.
A little bit. It was just kind of a refresh of something that we'd been working on. The first one we actually did in my brother's office. He had a graphic artist working for him, and we took and just did it. I mean, it was as basic as we could do. We had to draw and create the Y and a couple things, but yeah, it was time to have a professional actually do it. So.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it's neat to go in your stores because you go in and you think, just a couple of, I just need a couple of parts, and then you realize like just hoses and fittings alone. I mean, it's amazing. 3 different colors, maybe even more now. I mean, how do you keep track of all of that inventory?
It's all on computer. It's not in my head, I assure you. It's all done on computer. Yeah, it's funny because everyone says, oh, you need to add this, and I'll go and look at adding that number, that fitting, or that color, and next thing I know, I have 32 new numbers because I've got, this color, this size, everything changes. So every time I add a number or a series of something, it's at least 2 or 3 dozen numbers that get generated into the system. We've got over 12,000 SKUs in our system now.
Wow. And do you carry the same inventory in both stores, or?
For the most part, yes. The West Side location is a little bit smaller, so we don't go as deep. It also doesn't have as much traffic. It's one of those, I try to monitor it real closely. The more sales it generate, the more we'll increase the inventory. But the Eubank store is still, after being in the same location for almost 40 years, is still the flagship. So. Yeah,
I was going to say, I think most cars just drive themselves to that location.
Yeah,
but how are things going on the west side? I mean, there's a lot of race cars in Rio Rancho, and they kind of had to make a drive, but now you're right there at Eagle Ranch Road.
It's definitely the convenience is there for the consumer.
Yeah.
Part of the problem we run into is a lot of, I think, in my opinion, West Siders become East Siders during the course of the day. We've talked about this many times before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard to be there all the time for everybody. So we just try to do a general consensus of what time we can do things, and hope that they'll adapt and realize they don't have to do things on mail order.
Yeah, well, and we've talked many times about mail order. I mean, you go online, color. I mean, in other industries, of course, is this shirt really red? And it looks like that. But when you go online, your buddy told you, ooh, you got to get, this supercharger, and this is what you need.
Right.
And then, it's the wrong part for the car. And that's the real benefit. Of course, you and your staff at Eubank can totally help. But you got Ted on the west side. I mean,
yeah, Ted's been doing this a very long time.
Yeah.
He's almost got about 40 years experience by himself. I just had my own 10-year anniversary, August 27th. So I've been doing this 10 years. So just he and I have 50 years experience. So
wow,
that's twice as old as the next guy working for me.
Yeah, is that where the gray hair came from?
Yeah, we'll just say yes.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's the true benefit too, is you go in there and you probably have had some pretty crazy requests.
Oh, yeah.
What's the craziest request that you had to say, that's not going to fit in your Vega, or even though you could put a nice small block in a Vega. I'm not saying anything there. But
exactly. Sometimes people's expectations, or they think their needs are greater than they really are. You don't need to put a 1050 Dominator on a little 327. You can, but it's not going to be very efficient. It's not going to run well. It's way too much carburetor. You'd probably be a lot better off with maybe an 850 if you got enough compression to support it. But it's I don't know. I can't complain. I'm a professional bench racer. That's what I do. It's 10 years and still enjoying it.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, you guys carry racing fuel too. I mean, how many times have you loaded up the trailer, right? You got everything, and then you're like, we don't have any gas.
Right.
Or, a 3-day event or something, and now you're out of tires, and
Sure.
it's
take
probably,
care of all that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I believe you carry the same fuel as the track, right?
As a drag strip, yes.
Is there a fuel rule out there? I mean, are you required to carry that fuel? Or?
No, I did that as a matter of convenience. Most people don't necessarily like change. So we chose to use the same fuel as a drag strip. Plus, the nice thing is the brand Torco we went with is considerably cheaper than some of the other brands that are available, VP products, for example. You buy a 5-gallon can from us, you'll save $20 to $30.
Wow.
Versus if you buy it at like a VP gas station.
Wow. So how much does that, the different fuels, translate into power, ETs, on the track?
Well, using the right fuel is beneficial, but also using the wrong fuel can be detrimental because the more octane requires more power to burn it. And if you don't have enough compression to burn, let's say 118 octane, you don't want to put that in your lawnmower.
Right.
It's not going to run very well.
Right.
It can't support it. It can't burn it. It's physically not capable of it. But if you've got a 16-to-1 motor, or if you got a high boost application with turbo or supercharger or whatever, and you need that 118 octane fuel, then yeah, by all means, we've got it.
What do you think the biggest misconception when people are working on a build to go out to the drag strip? I mean, do they actually overbuild the horsepower? They can't hook it up? I mean, what's probably one of the biggest drawbacks they have here?
Probably now it's more so that, because we're I call it the generation of horsepower we live in. I've said it many times before. 1,000 horsepower isn't hard to generate nowadays.
Right.
Where 10 years ago it was still a challenge. Now it's you can make 1,000 horsepower pretty easily, even using a lot of stock components with just the right power adder.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of different divisions. I mean, because we've talked about reaction time on the Christmas tree.
Right.
And speed that you can carry through. And there's a lot of very competitive drivers out there that are in the pro and in the other divisions there. And it's neat to see out at the drag strip. I mean, the number of families with the junior dragsters and they
there's
move their way
quite a
up.
few juniors out there. There were a bunch out there this weekend for the Labor Day Bash.
Yeah, so the Jet Car was out there.
Yeah,
was it still as impressive as always?
Yeah, this time it was funny because there was one that was considerably quicker than the other. So you could see when they took off the line, he intentionally let the other guy go a little bit. So he was late on the tree, but he was still quicker because he ran about a full second faster than the other one.
Wow.
But it's with all the booming and flames and everything going on, it doesn't matter. It's all for the show. So
it's quite a spectacle.
Fans really dig that. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're involved in a lot of the racing out there, including the opportunity to street to strip, where people can bring out a street car. And what's funny is, I've determined that the reason that most people don't go out there and do that is because then you've got a timesheet.
Right.
The BS, and I've got a 12-second car that
that
lucky to run
16.
15. Right, exactly.
Yeah. There is that. But it's what's nice is it's a really good platform for people to learn.
Right.
I mean, you don't necessarily want to go out there and on a race day for your very first time out the drag strip because it's a lot more serious. A lot of guys take what they do very serious out there. But on the take it to the strip, it's a lot more laid back. You can actually ask directions. The starter will come down if you roll down your window and he'll tell you what you're doing wrong.
Okay.
Or give you guidance and things like that. And it's a lot more user-friendly, if you will.
Well, it's a lot cheaper than a speeding ticket too.
Absolutely.
I mean, like $20 or something. You bring your car out, as many passes,
Yeah, they're usually open until 6 to 11 or something like that, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, 2.5 weeks out. I mean, you got the all-out call-out.
Right.
I mean, that's the ultimate, and
Street
settling
race.
it. I mean, you got to drive the car there, and of course, you guys are a big-time sponsor of that. I mean, does that event kind of get you excited?
Yeah, it's a neat deal to see everybody they have a common meeting place, and then they all have to drive to the track together as a class.
Right.
And then once they get there, then they actually do call-outs.
Right.
So if I'm in your class and I think I can go quicker than you, then I'm going to call you out. It's a neat platform. It's not something that they do all the time. Now it's twice a year. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that they do it, and of course, the let it eat.
Right.
I mean, that's really where you put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's neat because they still have to make that same drive.
Right.
They don't trailer them into the track. They still have to make, I think it's like a 20-mile drive around from the meeting point. But these are, 8 and 9 second street cars.
Yeah.
I use that term kind of loosely, but it's neat to see that happen.
So how do they deal with like sandbagging and stuff, with that?
It's unfortunately with index racing, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to make sure you can at least go as quick as the index, if not quicker.
Yeah.
And then, kind of reel them in at the end. And
yeah. So, I mean, do you get to go out much to NHRA, events?
Not as much as I used to. I used to go all the time. I used to hit, 15 to 20 of them a year.
Oh, geez. Okay. Wow.
I enjoyed the racing.
Right.
That was kind of my thing. Now I'm lucky if I can get to a couple of them. So, but did hit Denver this year. And Indy, of course, was this past weekend.
Yes.
My buddy,
the big go. Yep.
Stevie won Top Fuel again. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, it's I'm kind of still focused a bit more local. That's why this weekend I went out to the drift racing and saw Crazy Dan out there having a good time and at the bonfire. So,
oh yeah. That's
it's a lot of fun. It's a neat spectacle to watch.
Well, I really appreciate you coming out and being on, one of our first shows. We may not even be quite good enough to be on the air yet, but really appreciate you coming out.
Oh, I look forward to it. Can't wait to do it again.
All right, we got a whole lot more coming up, including we're going to talk a little bit of more local racing, things that you could go out and see this weekend. You've been watching the New Mexico Motorsports Report on the Proview Networks.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walk up to the cashier, order up a root beer and a number 1. Cover it with green stuff, 1 scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Garden Sorts Team Sales is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Get into the game. Garden Schwartz Team Sales features fine products and apparel from Wilson, Schutt Sports, Speedline, and Russell Athletics. We offer custom embroidery and screen printing services for all of your school or club needs, from team uniforms to school letter jackets. Specializing in all sports and serving all communities, from big schools to small schools, from up north to down south, or all points in between. Garden Schwartz Team Sales. For great prices, friendly staff, and quality products, call Garden Schwartz Team Sales today at 1-800-880-7767. That's 1-800-880-7767. Since 1939, Garden Schwartz Team Sales is a proud supporter of New Mexico youth athletics.
And welcome back to the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on the Proview Networks. Here's Brooklyn Green with what's happening locally.
Locally here at the ABQ Dragway, Euro Performance presents the Street to Strip event. Street legal drags, test and tune, and time trials. Driver price is just $20, while spectator price is just $10. Sandia Speedway also has a race coming up. They take on the Clay Oval this Saturday night for the Fall Frenzy. Racing starts at 6:30. And that's about it for your Enza Racing Museum event calendar. Are y'all going to check out any of those events this weekend?
Well, I think it's going to be wing sprints, 305s out at Sandia. Ought to be a lot of cars. Towards the end of the season, what happens is that if you're out of the points, people start, not putting their cars back together. Mm-hmm. So I hope it's still a good show. But go out and see, good clay racing. Of course, they've got all the divisions running out there. I mean, streets actually. Luigi Truden posted on Facebook the other day that they're going to be running the USRA rules. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see a lot of growth in the streets next year. So it ought to be a lot of fun. But because sometimes you go out there and it's a lot of the same. I did have one announcement I wanted to make. A lot of us that went to Sandia, spent a lot of time out there, knew Dan Goss. Dan Goss actually was the longtime announcer out there on the asphalt track. Passed away earlier this week. It's a real loss for the family. But Dangerous Dan would want us to get out and go to the track. So if you're looking for a good excuse, head out to Sandia. Of course, the Street to Strip is also a great opportunity. You might as well go out there and get your car out there and find out what kind of times you're doing, because a couple of weeks down the road you're going to have the all-out call-out, mm-hmm. not too far away from the Hot Rod Rumble out there. So all of those events we're going to keep you posted on. And of course, you mentioned the Enza Racing Museum. I mean, go by there, open daily 10 to 4. You can check out a lot of really cool stuff.
They got a pretty cool little simulator there.
Yeah. And it's funny, you talk about a simulator. One of the things, I know you do a lot of iRacing. What do you think about, William Byron? He basically came up through iRacing. What are your thoughts on? Clearly the simulator's got to be great. What's your thought about iRacing and stuff?
I think sim racing is a great way to get used to being behind the wheel. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of or used NASCAR Racing 2003 season. Now, it sounds like it's a 14-year-old game, but there's such a dedicated community to go and update this game and modify it. And it's all legalware now because it's obsolete. These are the creators of iRacing from 14 years ago. Oh. So there's an online dedicated community just to go out there and go run leagues, go run races, just go and run at these tracks that the Cup guys run at the Xfinity guys, and make your paint scheme, bring whatever manufacturer you want, make your team. So I think it really does play to the fact that you can gain a lot of experience and not even have to leave the comfort of your own home, because this simulator, whether it be iRacing or NR 2003, a lot of those functions in the game, and I think calling it a game is an insult, because you can go in there and you can adjust the camber or the caster or the track bar. You can kind of see how your car's handling through the corner. You need to take a little bit of wedge out, or you need to hit a different apex through the corner. So I think a lot of these guys, especially a lot of the younger guys in the truck series, William Byron was a user of iRacing, and I really do think a lot of these guys do get a lot of experience. And looking back in the day, like a Brad Keselowski or a Dale Earnhardt Jr. or even a Denny Hamlin, your favorite, had used NR 2003 in the past to race online, to go and try to get experience for the race that's coming up. I think it's the future of trying to train and cuts down on tests or even building your own in-house simulator.
And these drivers here, they take it so serious. I have so many racing friends, and these guys are addicted to iRacing. It is serious. They set up the car, and then especially when iRacing got dirt, it was the biggest thing in the racing community here in Albuquerque. I knew so many people like, oh no, I can't hang out. iRacing's on dirt. I have to stay and play iRacing, and I've tried it, and to me it doesn't seem too real. It's hard for me. I'm not very good at it, but these guys, they're good at it. All of my friends.
Well, and I think what makes iRacing the most interesting is you're forced into that cockpit view. You can't do like a PlayStation game where you can have that far chase view or the roof cam. You got to be stuck there in the cockpit. So I think it really gives you that element of, okay, you have your pedals set up, you have your steering wheel set up. Now you're forced into the cockpit with just a little bit of look view with one of the keyboard functions. So you really do get a feel of what it's like to be behind the wheel at a short track or a super speedway.
They say it helps you too.
Oh yeah, and I think what makes it accurate is iRacing actually goes and they will go scan the racetrack. They take laser scanning technology like you see with Google Maps, and they will go out and do every square inch, every bump and crack of the racetrack.
Wow, and we've talked a lot about the silly season. Of course, Alex Bowman. A lot of people say that just his sheer commitment to the time in the simulator is what got him that seat. Now, of course, he goes out and has a great running at Phoenix last year, subbing for Junior when he was out with his concussion. But that's what they're talking about, is the sheer number of hours that used to be spent in the shop, right? Because when I talk to dirt guys, one of the things that the biggest thing that they get into is they really respect the guys that actually also work on the cars, not just the guys that show up and get in the seat. Always makes me think at Days of Thunder, and he shows up on his motorcycle and there's like, well, what's your experience? And he goes, well, the coverage on ESPN is really good, and just that whole thing that was set up. But Alex Bowman, going into the 88. Is a tremendous story. Car numbers are really important. Of course, his was paying tribute to his grandfather that ran the number 88, and so you've got the 24 is now going to be on the sidelines. Well, the 24 is going to be there, but the 5 is going to be on the sidelines because the 09 is going to Chase Elliott. What's your thoughts on the 05 that's been with Hendrick basically since the beginning? Now actually not being on the track next year.
Well, near and dear to my heart is Jeff Bodine. Not only is he a 1986 Daytona 500 champion, one of NASCAR's 50 greatest.
You owe me $1.
Exactly. But he is also our driver analyst at the Racing Experts, and getting to know him the last few years. He's a great person, and 6 of Hendrick's first 249 career wins came in that 5 car. Yeah. Had Jeff finished second at Martinsville in 1984, Hendrick Motorsports would have ceased to exist because it was a must-win situation, and Jeff proved that. He won the first Daytona 500 for that team. He won the first 6 races for Hendrick Motorsports, a team that would have shut down. So I think to see that 5 car not continued into 2017 is going to be really, really sad, because we've seen so many drivers come up and use that number in the Cup Series. Terry Labonte won a championship with that in '96. We saw the 5 with Kyle Busch when he took over for Terry. Casey Mears ran the 5 car. Mark Martin ran the 5 car. So it's had a lot of storied history with Hendrick Motorsports, and it's really sad to see that car number go.
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point. I mean, talking back about the Racing Experts. What you guys have done with that site. I mean, you got people at the track. I mean, people at Richmond, and James Jackson's going to be on my show. Is going to be live from Richmond. But you guys have really got some great coverage and been giving coverage to smaller teams. Because it's easy to go out and like me and chase down Junior at the Xfinity race on his way to the infield care center, but you guys really do great stories, on lesser known drivers, and I think that you've kind of built a reputation on that. I mean, talk a little bit about, and talk a little pride about the Racing Experts and what you guys are working on in the next couple of weeks.
Sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Like you said, we take pride in giving coverage, whether it be to the team that finished first or the team that finished 31st, because there's at least 40 stories out there each week with every driver who has run the Cup race, and we take pride in kind of going in those areas that nobody else is talking about, and I think that's what's made us stand over the years. But we've been able to break news that way. We've been able to get people out to the racetrack, and we're going to have a team out at Richmond. We're going to have, I believe, teams out at the next 7 out of the 10 playoff races. So we're going to have a good presence at the racetrack, and we were recognized by NASCAR and IndyCar. So it's really cool to see how this little project, this little hobby from a few years ago, has really turned in and really grown into a place that people do go to check out what's going on in the NASCAR community.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to go out and cover at Dover. So looking forward to that. But you really start to build a lot of camaraderie with the other media people. I mean, Jeff Gluck, jeffgluck.com. Of course, he had the fight at the race that we were at in Vegas when he left USA Today to try on his own. But he lived in Albuquerque for a little while. He still, he says he's still not sure which is his favorite, green or red. Jerry Jordan, he comes on the show. Some of the characters that we hope that we can incorporate into the TV show at some point. It's just a lot of goofy people. Bob Pockris, everybody's got a good Bob Pockris, imitation. Is at ESPN.com, and so actually spending time with him at the race at Bristol and talk a little bit about the future of the media, the things that are changing, and how we cover races. Because it used to be, even last year, you had two people that were there from ESPN on certain weekends. John Oriel Servitz was there. He's mainly the open wheel guy, but he did cover other races for him. Bob's doing it all himself. I mean, and look at the social media aspect too. I mean, with the amount of video that is being produced. I mean, and this guy's like doing it all, Twitter and Instagram and all of it. So many different ways you can get the race on your smartphone. I mean, the way that coverage is happening for motorsports is changing, and I don't need to get on my soapbox, but that's why this show is important. This show is just as, I mean, the ball and stick sports, dominate so many other things, but motorsports and the number of stories. We were just talking with Jim Costa and the number of people in the pits that'll help you get your car better and go faster. Yes, when it comes down to it, we all want to win. We do. I mean, that's why we're into racing and we enjoy racing. But at the same time, it's like, they always say, I can make fun of my brother, but you better not make fun of my brother. It's just one of those things that, maybe another division will help another division, but everybody loves you till you start winning. And then it's on. I mean, I learned that firsthand, when people started, taking me out, because I was the road racer that showed up to the circle track, so it just is what it is. But I think that's one thing, and I appreciate the fact that you've stepped up and got us to this place, and I look forward to just seeing what we can do with this show.
Well, thank you. It's going to be a fun ride here. We're going to have a lot of cool stories to tell. We're going to have some great in-house guests and some great interviews. I think it's just going to be only one direction, and that's up.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get involved with the show, you've got, critiques. We can take critiques. You've got, things that you like, you want to see, go to nmmotorsportsreport.com. You can go on there. You can, post suggestions, things you want to see more of. If you just like to get involved, you want information about what races are going on. We've got schedules that we're going to have on there. We've got a lot of sponsors that help us make this show happen. And, without people like Jim Costa with Yearwood and ABQ Dragway and the Unsers and all of that stuff, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't. It would be just like Jeff Bodine, or if Jeff Bodine wouldn't have won, we just wouldn't be here. But it's a collective, and we more than any other sport have to stick up for each other, and we got to go to tracks and we got to support it. So I look forward to seeing what you can do with the show and how we can support you.
Sure, absolutely. And for Brooklyn Green and for David Swope, I'm Dominic Otagon. That's going to do it for this edition of the New Mexico Motorsports Report here on the Proview Networks.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened? Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
Gecko's Bar and Tapas, a proud supporter of Proview Networks. It's been a fan favorite spot for food lovers and sports fans. With not one, but two great locations, including outdoor patio, an atmosphere you won't want to miss. Gecko's, off Academy and in Nob Hill. Ladera Golf Course. Open in 1980, Ladera features a full 18 including spacious greens, a large driving range, roomy practice putting greens, and 4 large lakes. Surrounding Ladera, beautiful views of the Sandia Mountains to the east and volcanoes to the west. Ladera is a challenging city-owned course with the longest playing yardage of any other city courses. For weekend tee times and more information, call 505-836-4449.